See who that is.
See who that is.
See who that is.
See who that is.
See who it is.
Come in.
Hello, and welcome to another bonus episode of the Laurel and Hardy podcast. I'm Patrick Vasey, and on today's show, we'll be stepping away from our chronological coverage of the careers of Laurel and Hardy, and instead we'll be looking at the latest Laurel and Hardy Blu-ray release from Eureka Entertainment. I'm talking, of course, about Laurel and Hardy, The Silent Years, 1928. It really is a great time to be a fan of Stan and Ollie, with a multitude of new books having been released recently, and more, including my own epic tome, Laurel and Hardy Silence, in the pipeline. Last year, we celebrated the release of Flicker Alley and Eureka's Blu-rays covering the boys' shorts 1921 through 1927, and there's a second volume of the definitive restorations on the way. So I was thrilled and honoured to be invited by Eureka Entertainment to contribute 4 commentary tracks for their set of 1927 Laurel and Hardy shorts, and again to provide 2 more for this latest release of the boys' 1928 silent comedies. The set is jammed with special features and extras, and so joining me to discuss all these, I'm thrilled to welcome back to the show our good friend and one of the producers of the discs, Chris Seguin. So, quicker than you can say Jack Robinson, let's head over to Toronto, Canada, and welcome today's guest.
Say, who's this fella Jack Robinson he's talking about?
I don't know.
I never heard of him before.
My guest today, joining us on the podcast, is our man in Toronto, Canada, the one and only Chris Seguin. Is it Seguin or Seguin?
I actually had someone ask me that on LinkedIn today.
Yeah.
It's Seguin.
Seguin.
Yeah, Seguin.
Seguin.
It's like
See, I've been
Seguin.
calling you Seguin for ages. And I heard you
you-
say it the other day. I thought, no, I've got that wrong.
Well, there's a good story that I won't tell right now about how I learned to pronounce my own name properly, fairly late in life. But we'll save that for another time.
Well, I do sympathise. I mean, people talk to me, Vazzy. No, it's Vasey. It's Vasey. Like
That's
Swayze,
what I
Patrick Swayze, but Vasey.
Okay. Yeah, you remind me a lot of Patrick Swayze.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. What, dead?
Yeah, exactly. And then there's Seaman.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's an
There's-
easy one. That's an
It's a
easy
great
one.
debate. Yeah.
It wasn't Mrs. Twiddlepast.
Not Twiddlepast. Paddlequist. Never mind who it was. Who was it?
Anyway, I mean, people might say that podcasts with you, Chris, are like buses. You wait around for ages for one and then 2 show up at once. Because, yes, this is the first of 2 back-to-back episodes with Chris, as we'll be discussing the next film in focus in episode 39, coming shortly, when we look at the boys' classic short, Perfect Day. But first, I've invited Chris to come on today to discuss the recent Blu-ray release from Eureka of Laurel and Hardy, The Silent Years, 1928. So welcome back to the Laurel and Hardy podcast. Chris.
Thank you, Patrick. It's always fun to talk to you.
I hope so. It's always fun to talk to you. And I always say this, I learn such a lot from you. So I look forward to our chats immensely, Chris, I've got to say. So yeah, the Eureka Blu-ray. This is the second volume from Eureka Blu-ray of Laurel and Hardy's silent shorts. The first, obviously, being 1927, released last year, 2024. And you've had quite some involvement in the production of these Blu-rays, Chris. Can you just tell us a little bit about how you got involved with Eureka in the first place?
Yeah, what happened with Eureka was I have a friend who was the president of the Buster Keaton fan club, how do I pronounce this? The Damn Finos. And he was doing some help with them on some Buster Keaton material, and I had some bonus material that I thought Eureka could use. And the nice thing about Buster Keaton also is that there's a ton of material that's in the public domain out there. Right. So there's all little scraps and pieces and commercials and things like that. So you can really jam pack those discs with lots of extras. And that's the thing I love. I mean, that's really why I buy most Blu-rays, is just for the extras. Right. And so I provided some commentary tracks. I'd done some commentary tracks with the director of Buster Keaton's film, The Railrodder, that he did in Canada. and also a commentary track with another film that Buster Keaton did in Canada called The Scribe, and I knew the director of that, and we had done a commentary track. So I was able to provide those and a few other things. And they finished up doing all their Buster Keaton series, and I kind of went, well, the fellow I was working with is Jacob Milligan. I said, well, Jacob, it's been nice knowing you, but probably that's the end of me unless you're doing something on Laurel and Hardy sometime. And he went, well, we just might be. Right? So when it came up, it was, he let me know that it was coming up, and it was super exciting. The interesting thing about their set is that it came out, or these tend to come out about 4 or 6 months after the Flicker Alley sets.
Yes. Yeah.
And one of the big challenges was that they were contractually obligated not to use any of Flicker Alley's bonus material. So at that point, you're starting at square one. And like I said, there's really not all that much out in the public domain for Laurel and Hardy. I think about, those dollar or pound shop DVDs that would have a lot of Larry Seaman shorts on them, some solos, The Stolen Jewels and Utopian Flying Deuces, and really not much else, some scattered trailers or whatever. So it's like, how do you find the things that are going to make this interesting? And while bearing in mind that, maybe people haven't seen a lot of this traditional stuff because they're not the huge fans, but going, what can we give people that are going to want to buy this as a set that lives up to Eureka Master of Cinema's very high standards, and also really please the Laurel and Hardy fans who usually don't get too much stuff in the way of extras on any of the releases. So it was kind of that take on it. And also, one thing I know, because I'm really bad at this too, is a lot of purchasers of physical media and Blu-rays are double dippers. Right? And they will buy things for like maybe the quality is that much better, or the bonus material is that much different. And so I also took that in mind too, because people who live in the US, or people who may live in the UK and bought the US set because it was released 6 months earlier, would also go, oh, I want to have this one too because of this bonus material. And that seems to have proven true. I think a lot of people online and some of the reviews have mentioned having both because just for the bonus materials. So that's kind of a point of pride to me that we were able to achieve that.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I have both sets, I must admit. And even just the packaging, I always mention packaging. It's important to me. I don't know why it's important to me, but the way physical media looks is really important to me. And I think it often is a sign of the quality within. And I love, I mean, to be honest, Flicker Alley is very nice. Well, they're very different in the way that they designed.
Yes.
But the Eureka ones I really like. I think they've taken such a lot of care and effort. And there's it looks like a lot of love has gone into the design of the package, the fonts they've used, and the selection of images they've used, the sort of the cardboard slip case, if you've got one of the limited first release issues. Yeah, really impressed with that. And also the booklets are always very good with Eureka as well, I found.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they packed them. I don't know how many pages these are. I think they're like 64 pages with, up to 4 essays by different scholars, and kind of in-depth looks at the films and things like that. So they really pack a lot in there. If I can't think of any company, maybe Criterion, who does a better job with their physical media releases than Eureka and their Masters of Cinema series. It's super impressive, and it's kind of it makes you proud to be part of one of those things. It was nice. They actually gave me a producer credit on both, which was nice. I think I earned it, but it's nice to kind of get a little shout out like that, because
of course it is. Yeah.
Again, it's a point of pride to be involved in this set.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you say, you're just talking about the sort of dollar DVDs and things. This is where the quality really shines through. And yes, you're paying a little bit more. I mean, to be honest, they are still a steal at the price that these cost, but you are getting you can see that there's effort and there's thought and there's care gone into these things, and that's all I think any proper fan, any real fan of Laurel and Hardy wants. They want to see that care that's gone into it. And if anybody has the 1927 set already, or even if you don't, the booklet for the 28 shorts again has film notes written by Paul Merton. He's written film notes on all the films. The films, we should say, so in this set, we are looking at Leave 'Em Laughing, The Finishing Touch, From Soup to Nuts, Your Darn Tootin', Their Purple Moment, Should Married Men Go Home, Early to Bed, Two Tars, Habeas Corpus, and We Four Down. So there's not as many films on this set as the 27, but it's a cracking lineup of shorts. You know, I've got to say, it's a really, really nice box set.
It's quality over quantity on this one. I mean, both were set, but this is 1928 is prime Laurel and Hardy. It's interesting that 27 ended with Battle of the Century, which was technically released in 28 but shot in 27, so fair enough. And that is the turning point for the boys. So to kick off with the following film after that and just see even how they grow between Leave 'Em Laughing and Two Tars and We Fall Down is pretty astronomical. Also, I think that it helped with I think there was 15 films on the first one versus 10 on this one. So it helped with you not having to do as many commentary tracks.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that's a very good point.
We'll get to that. I do want to talk about that later, but because it's very interesting, your approach to it. But I just want to get back to, so you have this thing where the Flicker Alley set was phenomenal, and how could it not be when you had Randy so involved in it?
Yes, absolutely.
Like Randy doing his Randy thing of these super in-depth commentary tracks on every single film. The man's knowledge is like through the roof.
Yeah, second to none, isn't it?
It's incredible, right? Hey, Randy, if you're listening. But so you can't compete with that in terms of commentary tracks. So I said, well, what can you do that's going to be completely different? And so my plan was, so I gathered up you, Glenn Mitchell, who your listeners will know, Neil Brand, David Callett, and my friend Kip Harness, who's been on your podcast before. Yep. He's based in Toronto, and he's written an excellent book on Laurel and Hardy. And I went, let's have a lot of diversity in who's talking and what they have to say. To the point on the first one, I did a commentary track with Kip on Battle of the Century, and Neil Brand did one on Battle of the Century as well. And they're two completely different things, and they're both completely different from Randy's. So it's kind of a real schoolroom about Laurel and Hardy, because you'll have things like, you and Glenn know your stuff, right? You'll dig deep into the film as you're watching it. I like to do a thing. I just like to have conversation like I'm having here. So I've done all of my commentaries with Kip, because I've known him for years, and it's just having a fun conversation while you watch the film and discussing the film as it goes by. And I think those are really effective too. And then you have David Callett, who's on a whole other planet.
Yes.
Right? Like he's one of the most thoughtful, insightful, and kind of makes you think differently commentators I've ever heard. And on the first set, he did a running commentary over the course of 5 films that were really this penetrating insight into the evolution of Laurel and Hardy that ran 100 minutes. If it's 5 films times 20, it's this 100 minutes audio essay that is, turn it into an audiobook and listen to it in the car. It's really wonderful because it doesn't necessarily sync up with what you're seeing on the screen, but it's informing you as you watch. And that's 2 different ways of going at it. You can go, oh, hey, there's Chet Brandenburg on the screen, or you can go, here, I'm going to tell you a story and have the visuals behind it. So,
and the story, of course, it's very relevant because he's talking to you about the evolution of the comedy team and everything. So it's very, very relevant. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, he's a guy that could change his commentary track on Harry Langdon's The Three's a Crowd almost made me like the film. So he almost convinced me. So that was cool. So yeah, like the commentary tracks were the first thing, and then what else do you get on there, right? I think one thing that I really liked getting on there was I got these Super 8 cut downs put on
Yeah, yeah.
of some of the shorts, and those were from my collection when I was a kid, which I'm not anymore. When I used to, living in Canada, I ordered them from the UK from Walter and Mountain Films, and they're these little 7 to 3 minute cut downs of scenes from the silent film. So I think on this one we had, oh, what did we have on here? We had Sailors Beware. We had two cut downs from Do Detectives Think, and then we had Battle of the Century.
Yeah.
And I wanted to kind of get those on because you were mentioning how much Blu-rays cost, right? Back when you were buying these things on Super 8, the Battle of the Century might cost you $10 in 1978 dollars.
Is that as much as 1,000? Why, man alive, it's twice as much. Gee whiz.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it was like a 3 minute clip because at the time that was all you could get was the pie fight scene. And it was a lot of money and it looked like not great. So and I wanted to put those on as like a comparison. So like, look at the stuff we had to watch, when we were
Yes.
doing,
Yeah.
home video with movie projectors. And just the advances that have been made have been terrific. And on the first one, I had a great conversation with Glenn Mitchell as a commentary behind those Super 8s because he and I had a lot of the same experience
Yeah, they were
buying
great. They were
those
really
things.
good.
Yeah. So that was super fun stuff to get on there. I also like getting on like the interviews with Stan. Seemed to be really well received. You
Yes,
know,
yeah, they were very well received. I've seen quite a bit of feedback on those. There's a few reviews on YouTube these sort of commentators and reviewers have done, and they went down really well because it's funny. I was saying this the other day. There are things like the interviews with Stan from the 50s, 57 and 59 that
mhm.
as fans we've had them for so long and we know about them and we know kind of almost every word of them, but I forget sometimes there are people finding Laurel and Hardy or who aren't familiar with these things, and so to suddenly have this on a Blu-ray as a commentary is just mind-blowing. I could imagine coming across that for the first time as a fan, thinking, "This is amazing." I remember going back to sometime in the '90s when I was starting collecting VHS tapes, and all I wanted was interviews with Stan and Babe as
Mhm.
actors. That's all I wanted to see them on a chat show. I thought there
Yeah.
must be something, and of course there is so little out there actually like that.
Mhm.
But these interviews with Stan, they're so wonderful to listen to over and over again, and to have them on the Blu-ray finally, I think is great, and they've really gone down well.
Well, especially that hour-long one that he did just after Babe died
Yeah,
is like
yeah.
that's the price of admission right there. And you're absolutely right. You tend to think that these things are, oh, I've seen these a million times. Man, and then you go, well, not everyone else has, right? Like not everyone's going to be the Laurel and Hardy geek that I am. That's watched and heard everything. There's a lot of this first time stuff, and so even the commentary tracks, this is all new to a lot of people who have the interest in Laurel and Hardy. But a lot of times, if you're buying a Eureka set, you have an interest in silent film or classic film in general. So you're just adding this to your repertoire, and you're learning a lot. So that was another kind of key objective of doing these things.
I think it's a really important. It certainly taught me a lesson not to assume that people have heard it or seen it. Because yes, I've seen it, and a lot of the people that I know in the fan community, they will have definitely have seen it and heard it. But actually, there's a lot of people out there that haven't.
Mhm.
And for those guys and girls, it's just it's gold stuff. It's gold dust, and we must make sure. And I'm so pleased that they're on those. When I first heard they were going on the sets, I was a little bit skeptical. Why? What is that? Just a waste of time? But actually,
Yeah.
no. That was like the highlight of the disc for some people. So yeah, a real learning point for me, that one.
Yeah, well, and it's true because that you can apply that to your podcast too, right? It's not
Yeah,
always going to be everyone who's super knowledgeable. They've come here to learn,
yeah,
right? It's funny. There was a piece on the first one that I thought would was kind of like a an act of desperation because you're trying to, pack the thing, and it was the footage of their 1932 UK tour,
oh yeah, yeah,
and I synced it up to the recording they did, the 78 recording they did, and that's pretty common stuff for me. Anyway, it's been out on CD. You can find it everywhere. I had it on vinyl at one point, but and the footage has been released before, but a lot of people hadn't seen it. And, I was looking for relevance. So I went, okay, I wanted this on here because Laurel and Hardy were, um, these discs present them as silence, but they could also adapt to just being sound comedians. So on the same disc, you have 15 mute films, and then you have a piece of their comedy, which is just their voices that you can't see, right? It always makes me wonder what, like, these people who grew up watching Laurel and Hardy, like the old original people that had never heard their voices, right? And then heard them for the first time, and how, because when I watch one of their films now, of course, I can imagine their voices, right? We have that benefit, but not a lot of people did back then. So that totally changes the viewing experience, right?
yeah, yeah. I remember, funnily enough, one of those '50s interviews with Stan. I think I forget which one it is now. The interviewer was telling Stan that he remembered being a child and hearing the voices for the first time in the cinema.
Unashamedly, I tell you that I was in love and crazy about Laurel and Hardy as a kid. I have always been. And had seen many of your silent films. And I lived in a town called Gary, Indiana. And though I had gone to Chicago on weekly jaunts with my parents from time to time to see films there, and they had talkies in Chicago at Balaban and Katz long before we had them in Gary, I was very much in love with Laurel and Hardy, and I had misgivings about seeing them in their first talkie, Pardon Us, which was the first feature-length talkie I'd seen. I don't remember ever seeing you in a two-wheeler talkie.
Oh, yeah, we made quite a few.
But I didn't remember that.
Oh.
And I remember we had a theater in Gary called the Palace Theater. We had vaudeville there, too, out of Chicago.
I played them.
And I remember how when I bought my ticket for this movie, I almost ran out of the theater because I was scared to death that the love that I had for Laurel and Hardy might be dissipated by hearing their voices. And I sank way low in my seat. And I remember how I ran all the way home. I lived about maybe 8 blocks from there. I ran all the way home from there to exclaim to my mother, who was home at the time, that it was all right, that I loved them, and it was still all right. I was saved.
Yeah, a lot of them fell by the wayside.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
true.
But I can remember as if it were yesterday, and the seat I was in, the theater even, when I went to see Laurel and Hardy in the first talkie that I knew of, and how frightened I was.
And they weren't too good either on account of being made on records, you know.
Right, right.
The sound was very bad.
You very rarely get those kind of sort of memories and recollections from people who are actually there in the cinema of the day. So yeah, lovely stuff.
I wonder how many people had that same experience with Harold Lloyd, where they went and saw Welcome Danger, and they ran home to mom going, "It's okay."
Yeah, I suspect
they
not
just
many.
went home crying. Sorry, I have opinions on Welcome Danger.
Good stuff. So yeah, we must just reinforce as well. So those extras that we've just spoken about, they're on the 1927 disc.
Yes.
Yes. So if anybody's thinking that sounds great, they're on the 1927 disc.
Yeah, exactly. If you don't have it, go get it. If
but
you
on the
already have it,
on the 1928 set, the new set, there are more of the Super 8 cut downs that you've put on.
yeah,
Car Wreckers, which has to
Yes,
be
which
two
is-
tars. Has
that
to
you're
be
going to
two
guess
tars.
which they are. Okay.
Let 'em Rip, I'm going to say is Tootin. You're Don Tootin. Is
You're
that it?
darn tooting, yeah.
Tootin, yep.
Yeah.
And A Right Mess. No idea.
See, that's I had no idea either. You know what it is? It's the last third or so of their Purple Moment.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Okay. What the food fight in the kitchen?
Yeah, because these cut downs, they would just take, here's a snippet without context. Sometimes they put a title card on there.
Yeah.
It's funny. There's one that'll be on the 1929 short for Liberty, and it shows them. It begins with them going up the elevator at the high rise at the construction site, but they have a title card at the beginning that says something along the lines of having fallen into a pond, stand and always look for a place to put dry clothes on. It's, okay. And that explains the crab in the pants, I guess.
Right. Okay.
You know,
Okay.
and the reason they're changing the clothes. But because these things would have no context. So you look at something like, when you get, everyone who buys the set ultimately gets to watch it. When you look at something like Out of Step, which is also from Your Darn Tootin' along with Let 'Em Rip, it's just the little scene where they start busking, they start playing out on the sidewalk, and then they run afoul of they have the drunk who's kind of like tapping them in when they're tapping their heels, 1, 2, 3 to come in, and it ends with the conductor upstairs hearing the noise and then pouring the water down on the cop.
Right. Right.
So they basically just took, and you don't need anything more than that. It's a completely contained scene. Starts with them doing something, ends with them walking away and the cop getting hit by water, right?
Right.
So, they just get lucky sometimes with those, and sometimes, Let Them Rip, just they're ripping pants for some reason, but it's fun.
Who cares? Yeah, who cares why? Yeah. So how much would one of those cost? One of those Super 8s back in the day?
Oh boy,
segment.
maybe £2
Okay.
for like one of the short ones with the 50-foot, maybe £5 which is about $10
Right.
back then. So again, you're getting lots for your money with this one.
Yeah.
One of the things I really like on this, there's a couple of things I really like, and I'm just going to mention one first of all is Scott McGillivray, who did the From the 40s Forward book, did a really nice tribute to Robert Youngson, who's the man behind the compilation films that were hugely popular in the late 50s to the 60s, including The Further Perils of Laurel and Hardy, Laurel and Hardy's Laughing 20s. And he was a huge figure in their popularity in the 60s. And a lot of times the only way you could see the silent films, I saw them on TV, but for some reason the silent films never made it to regular syndication, which always surprised me, regular TV syndication until fairly late. And they did those kind of horrible laugh tune chop up things, which were arguably even worse than the Super 8 cut downs. But, Scott had written a chapter on Youngson in his book. And so I asked him to put together something, and he did a really nice job of telling us a lot about Robert Youngson and his story. And again, these are stories that people aren't going to know, right?
Yeah.
And again, he's a very important figure, and we added a couple trailers in there just for amusement's sake. This thing is really packed with like some interesting bonus stuff. Oh, I was going to mention, just on the note of Youngson, that on the 27 set and also on the 28 set, two of the films have scores that are adapted from the Robert Youngson films.
Oh, okay.
Right. So if you've watched these films, growing up, and then you hear this music again, it has almost a visceral effect on you because it's so familiar and it's so distinct. So I think on 27, it's Putting Pants on Philip, and on 28, it's The Finishing Touch. So those are super fun to listen to. I want to get back to The Finishing Touch in a minute, and you know why. But I just want to mention two more things. This one took me by surprise because when I was talking to Jacob, there's a lot of stuff that didn't get on here that I wanted to get on, and hopefully we'll be on 29. But at a certain point, he said there's not enough room for that. And it's like, okay, why? There's a 75, 80-minute feature-length documentary done by David Cairns called United We Fall. And it's not kind of a traditional, Dan Laurel was born in 1890 and, story died in 1965. But it's a really kind of, much like Dave Callady's, very deep, insightful stuff about the films. And it's a hugely engrossing documentary, maybe the best I've seen. there's not really a lot of good documentaries I can think of about Laurel and Hardy. But this one is just, if you, it's like, again, like David Khaled. You go, wow, I've been watching Laurel and Hardy for years and years and years. I never considered this before. I never saw this before, right? So that's highly, highly fascinating. And then both discs, I believe, have interviews with Neil Brand, who's a musician, and I'll give a shout out to his score on Your Darn Tootin'.
Oh, yes.
Because one of the biggest failings of Your Darn Tootin' is I don't know why it wasn't done with a sound on disc originally.
Yeah.
Because it's so necessary. And if you're watching that film, as it's been released in the past with music that doesn't really sync up with what's going on, especially in that bandshell thing, it just doesn't work,
No.
Youngson did a nice job. He used that as an opening for one of his I think, the Further Perils of Laurel and Hardy. He used that and did a really nice score for that. Black Hawk Films on Super 8 did cobbled together something nice, but Neil really kind of captured.
Oh, he nailed it.
That
he nailed it. Yeah, I did. Well, funnily enough, on the podcast, I did an interview with Neil on Your Darn Tootin' and also Ben Modell. So two accompanists and their takes on the film, because, as you say, it is so crucial to get that right to sell the comedy. The only version I'd seen for years was, I think, the Vision or Virgin Video VHS. And it was just any old Marvin Hatley tune thrown over, and it just killed all of the gags. And I didn't really like I love the end bit, but obviously with the panther, because that'll just tear through anything. But the actual film itself, where they are musical gags, they just fell flat. So the Neil Brand score was actually used on Paul Merton's Silent Clowns series. I think it was Silent Clowns or Silent Comedy.
Yeah, that's where I saw it first.
Yeah, and it was on there, and it was just. And I just only remembered when I was just preparing for the podcast that I had this on VHS. So I went back and watched it, and it was wonderful. And I enjoyed the film so much more because of that. And I think I did use a sample of that, I think, in the podcast.
What I went into once things get moving towards the end of the film. That's very much in the Leroy Shields style.
Yes.
Although without as much tune to it. But I did make a tune out of the opening of the film. So I took the words Your Darn Tootin'. And so the tune is which is pure Marvin Hatley.
Yes.
It could so easily have come off one of those Bohunks tracks.
Yeah, just so good. And I was really pleased to see that it was used on the Blu-ray. Just wonderful, wonderful.
Well, what's interesting on the Flicker Alley one, they used the old 1978 Black Hawk Film score,
right? Yeah,
as an alternate, right? So that's huge nostalgia value for me, because I think I have 2 copies of that on Super 8. I liked it so much, and because I wore one out. But they did a pretty nice job of using stock music to put together a very effective score.
That's good.
That's good. So that was really great.
The nostalgia thing is massive as well, isn't it? With you talking about Black Hawk and also the Robert Youngson films. When I was doing probably the back end of the silent films on the podcast, I like to have an audio clip right at the very, very start of each episode, which kind of sets the scene for the films. And obviously, with the silent films, it's a lot harder to do that because there's no dialogue in there to sort of to throw a joke in. And it wasn't until fairly late on in that season, the silent season, where I suddenly thought, hang on, the Robert Youngson films sort of describe the action, and it's a nice way in. And as soon as I started dropping those into the start of each episode, the feedback that was coming back from people who grew up with the Youngson films, they loved it because it transported them back into that comfortable, comfy time when they were young, watching these pictures and thinking, right, I'm set up here, to watch this and to listen to this podcast. So, yeah, Youngson really does tick the boxes for nostalgia for a lot of people I know.
Yeah, and it was done. It's funny because John McCabe's biography, Mr. Laurel and Mr. Hardy, was called, I believe, an affectionate biography, right? And I know that there was a series done on TV around the same time, around the mid '60s, called, an affectionate look at the Marx Brothers, or an affectionate look at Abbott and Costello. And the word affectionate has kind of gone out the window these days, I think, right? And the Youngson things are affectionate. Like, you can tell that he's got, a feeling for these films. He edits them with care, because he doesn't show complete films. He'll find ways of taking choice moments, but he doesn't mar the film. The music is sympathetic to it. Sometimes it's considered a bit jazzy or whatever, and sometimes the commentary, people, there's always these kind of commentaries that are like, Charlie Chase was one of the most popular comedians of the 1920s until alcoholism and death overtook him too young. And you're kind of going, I'm trying to watch this comedy here. Fatty Arbuckle was popular with everyone until disgrace and death. How? But he does it. It's funny. I think in one of them, I forget which film, but there was a reference to Laurel and Hardy being the fiddle and the bow.
Yes.
Right? And so he closes the film with a thing along the lines of, the fiddle and the bow are playing no longer. And you kind of go, okay, that's nice. That's because he's wrapping up the film in a nice nostalgic way.
Yeah.
I think for people who watched these films back in the 20s when they first came out, because the 1960s, the distance between the 1960s and now is actually shorter than the distance, I think, from the 1960s to the 1920s. Right. So, the people who were watching those, the older people who had that nostalgic feel for Laurel and Hardy, but it's created, a nostalgic feel for people like us. But also, I think if you were a kid watching these things, it would just re-emphasize the affection between, and getting back to the word affectionate, but the affection between the two characters. So those are nicely done. If you haven't had a chance, everyone go out and see Laurel and Hardy's Laughing 20s and The Further Tales of Laurel and Hardy. Definitely.
And the version of Early to Bed on the Youngson film is the best version because it cuts out all the horrible stuff that upsets me greatly.
Yes. Well, what's funny with early, because that's true, because I kind of am a bit of a defender of Early to Bed, right? And one thing I liked is, I did a commentary track with Kip Harness, and he's less so. So it became, I thought, a really interesting conversation. And here's a little bit of a giveaway that you don't think about until you're kind of talking to someone about it, is the main failing of, and here's spoiler alert for the commentary, the main failure with Early to Bed is there are no Hardy camera looks.
None at all.
None at all.
Ah, wow. Okay. That's interesting.
Because he's never looking for sympathy.
Yeah, that's true. That's a really good point.
So there's nothing where he's looking directly into the camera and you go, oh, wow. That never occurred to me until now.
Yeah.
So
No, I didn't
again,
pick up on that.
These are films you can watch over and over again and find new things. We were talking earlier about, I'm going to segue into this anyway, the difference between, for you, for doing commentary tracks and doing a podcast.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Because they both place you behind the mic. But I had forgotten you did two for this one. You did, which ones you did? Tell me again.
Yeah, Finishing Touch and Habeas Corpus for the 28 set. Yeah. And 27 set, I did With Love and Hisses, Why Girls Love Sailors, Sailors Beware, and Philip, Putting Pants on Philip.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you got like all those, and you got one choice one in there, and then some of the earlier ones.
Yeah. But actually, it was fine because with Finishing Touch, I sort of leapt at the chance of doing Finishing Touch because that is one of my all-time favorite Laurel and Hardy shorts, not just Silence, but of all the shorts. But you quickly kind of realize that actually nobody wants to sit and listen to you going, oh, this bit's great. Watch this bit. This is brilliant. This is so funny. So, what I like to try and do with my commentaries is to actually kind of watch the film along with you, the viewer, and talk about the action that's on the screen, but actually talk about it and also narrate kind of what's happening at the time. So very, very similar to the audio essays that I do on the podcasts. So I kind of thought originally, before I'd even done any of the 27 ones, that it'll be easy, it'll be fine. I'm just talking. I'll use the essays that I've done and I'll wheedle it. But my God, it's hard work. It's really, really hard work to do it in that way. I mean, I could quite easily just read, an essay that I've written over the top, and not even look at the screen. But that I really want to kind of join in with the film, because I don't want to be disconnecting myself from the film when viewers are watching it.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's so hard to. It's so different to doing a podcast. It really is. It's immensely enjoyable, but it's a graft. You've really got to, piece in, piece there. Is that long enough? Because I want to talk about this when that bit happens on the screen. So I've got to now fill in for 30 seconds. What do I? It's really difficult. There's an art to it, and I take my hat off to people that do it well, because it's not easy. I'm glad I've done it, because it is. Yeah, it was a really interesting process. And I think I pulled it off pretty well. The feedback I've had's been very positive so far, so that's really pleasing. To get that.
You did a stellar job, and you're very listenable too. So,
well, my wife might argue, but we won't go into that.
A cup of tea. But I think once you've done the 10,000 hours of it, then you'll be a professional.
Exactly.
A great job. Like Glenn Mitchell is a real pro at that too. He's done so many commentary tracks, and he can just nail those. He writes a script.
Yeah.
And he sticks to the script, and it syncs up, and it's like, how do you do that?
Yeah. I must ask Randy about his process, because I'd love to know if he has the same issues, because obviously with his knowledge, he could probably watch a film and just riff and just say, oh yes, and it would be fantastic. And I don't know whether that's what he does, or whether he has all the kind of preparation that I have to do as well. I'll have to ask him next time we speak, just to see what his process is like. I'd be fascinated to find out.
I feel like he doesn't have any notes with them unless he wants to be absolutely sure when and where Chet Brandenburg was born.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly.
but other, just to be specific. But I think beyond that, it's like, he doesn't have to go through anymore. Oh, I wanted to point out, I was just looking at my notes, by the way. For some reason, the Region 1, Region 2 thing, the first set was only Region 2.
Right.
But this one is region free. So listeners in the UK, in Europe, and in North America can all enjoy this without having to worry about it not being able to play on their player. So
Fabulous.
That's a good to know thing. I think that, other than that, the films look fantastic. Just so people know, they're not any different from what's on the Flickr Alley in terms of the source material or the quality. So, if that question comes up, if that question's in your mind, and if that's going to be a deal breaker, the films are exactly the same, which means they're all better than you've ever seen them before in your life. Nothing in the world's perfect, but nothing I've ever seen has looked this good. And, every time you think, I remember when the old Lost Films set came out in the US on DVD, it's like, wow, these are fantastic. I've never seen them look like this before. I can't imagine, this just tops them like tenfold, but I can't imagine these looking any better unless, some kind of AI thing happens that actually works.
Yeah, you do. So, I've got to say, you do, from time to time, you get the impression that you're seeing these films for the first time, which having seen them so many times is quite astonishing, actually. The one that springs to mind, and I think I probably mentioned this before, in the 1927 set, Duck Soup, is you see so much more of the screen. And when I look back to the version that I've been used to watching, it's like peeping through a dirty keyhole at a cinema screen, because it's just this dirty circle that you're looking at. But there is so much more screen available, so much more image to see.
Mhm.
Just wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful. And again, just visiting the old Universal set of DVDs, you now realize just what poor quality images we've been so used to watching, and grateful for it, because obviously to have all these films is great in any case. But yeah, looking at now, we've got them on Blu-ray like this, cleaned up, and well, not even cleaned up so much, but just looking stunning from really good source materials.
Yeah.
But they haven't lost that authentic look, if that makes sense. They don't look scrubbed. Some of the restorations you can see, they do look too polished and start to look a bit waxy. These are just they're authentic. They look like films, which I think is really important, actually, because they're talking about nostalgia. There's something about the old VHS tapes that are very nostalgic, and you kind of get used to the little bits of dirt specks and the little hairs that go across the screen or whatever it is that get stuck in the lens. But yeah, they've done a great job. It's Serge Bromberg again, of course, who's been responsible for the restorations.
Kudos to Serge on that one.
Oh,
but it's true.
Job.
You want those scratches. You want those hairs, because it's funny, because if you go and read old exhibitors' comments, right, from the 20s, and a lot of times, the distributors will get a film, months after it's been released, if they're in a smaller town or whatever, and they'll make comments about the print quality, right? So these, the films always had scratches. I'm always kind of shocked to think, it's like, wow, I'll never see another, like, what's the last film you could watch that had like specks of dirt or scratches in it? Now that they're all digital,
that's right. Yeah,
but that's just isn't a thing anymore, right?
Yeah,
but it's a huge part of kind of recognizing that you're watching things from another time.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
not watching some kind of video. So
yeah, that's right. I mean, I think there's something in when I remember the definitive restoration set when that came out. Some of the films in that, they were jaw-droppingly good. So clear. So so I'm talking about the later, I think is it Busybodies, Toad in a Hole, something like that, and seeing them driving down those palm tree lined avenues, and they just look so beautiful, as if it was made yesterday. So there is something about that. But I think certainly for the silent films, I'm quite happy to see them still looking a little bit old, let's say, because I think they should. I think it feels right that way. But having said that, the quality of them are so good. Just thinking back to With Love and Hisses, it's just it's jaw dropping on that.
Oh, the leap set. On that one, the early stuff, like Duck Soup, Sailors Beware. The leap in quality is astounding.
Yeah.
And if you see the films, they always have a little scroll at the beginning, or it's in the booklet of how these things were put together, right? And sometimes it's six different pieces of film. Some would be 16, some would be 28 millimeter, whatever.
From all over the world as well, not just
from all over the world,
collection.
And they make it happen. So again, it's they're both astounding sets, and I can't recommend them highly enough. I'm trying to think of anything else I want to talk about this. So there's so much to talk about. I think that the big thing is 29 is going to happen.
That's great news. Yeah, that's great news, because we still haven't finished the silent years, of course. There are still some in 29 to be seen. Yeah. Do you know if it's going to be just the 29 silents, or are they going to eke into the talkies? Do you know?
To the best of my knowledge, the silents and the talkies are taking on two distinct universes. That Blackhawk and Serge are going to be involved with the silents, and I think UCLA and Kit Parker Films, I could be wrong, are going to be involved with the talkies. Because I know UCLA has been doing a lot of restorations.
Yeah, that sounds familiar, films. Actually.
So I believe there is another. Randy will know for sure. I think this is 98% certain that there's going to be an upcoming definitive restorations volume 2.
Yes, there is. Yes, that's correct.
Hopefully they'll address some of the challenges with volume 1. I don't know if it's going to be sequential. I don't think so, because I think
No, I
they're
don't think so.
doing I think they're doing the films kind of like, what are the easiest ones to get done first,
Mm.
and while we work on harder ones. So it's not like, well, we're not going to hold up the release of um, whatever Men of War because we don't have unaccustomed as we are done, kind of thing. So that's what we have. But yeah, I think they're going to be separate. What would be interesting to me if somehow they got the silent versions of the
Yeah, yeah,
1929 talkies there, because how many people saw, Birthmarks as a silent,
yeah. That's a good point.
or Unaccustomed
Yeah,
as We Are, which has been released on DVD by the Lost Film series as a silent film, right? So
yeah.
I don't know enough about that, unfortunately,
Mm.
but that's something I would really like to see.
Yeah, yeah. Me too. Yeah, definitely, definitely.
And I'm hoping to get like some more Super 8s on there for sure, but and the same cast of characters in terms of commentators. So pick your 29
Oh,
films
right,
wisely.
right. Hope you're going to say
And
that.
a few other things up our sleeves right now in terms of uh, maybe some solo films, relevant solo films, that
Yeah,
kind of
that's
thing.
nice. Yeah,
So
that's always nice.
yeah, it was nice to, it's, one thing that I really wanted that was on the Flickr Alley 28 set. I wanted it so hard on. That's the sound of that. Cut that where I say hard on. Hang on a second. I'm gonna start again.
You really did want that, didn't you?
Because I had Anita Garvin and Marion Byron in it. Is one of well,
Stop it now. Come on.
one of the films I really wanted that was on the Flickr Alley set that we couldn't get on here because of the agreement was A Pair of Tights,
Ah,
which
yes.
is the Anita Garvin and Marion Byron two-reeler that Stan and Babe were supposed to have a cameo in, but didn't. Because it's an amazing film and very relevant to the time, because it just proved by 1928 how popular Laurel and Hardy were, that Roach was going, how do I have lightning strike twice?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And you kind of wish those two made more films together, because they hit their stride. The first two they did together aren't that really great, but then this one is it's kind of a masterpiece. And it was one of those things I was mostly familiar with through the Youngson films too, because he included a big chunk of that. So yeah, finding some good relevant solos. If anyone has any ideas for things they'd like to see on 1929, send them to Patrick.
Thank you so much.
Bear in mind that it would probably have to be stuff that's in the public domain,
Yeah.
or that doesn't require too much expense
Yeah.
or effort, because all the expense and effort are going into the films
Yes, of course.
themselves.
Of course.
So, but we're open to opinions, and don't be hurt if it doesn't show up, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I was hoping that we might see in the 28 set some of the solo films from Stan and Babe to link in with Finishing Touch, because there's a lot of crossover, a lot of gags that reappear from some of the earlier films. But as you say, there's only so much space, and I would rather see a feature-length documentary done well, as we've got here, and this wonderful tribute to Robert Youngson from Scott McGillivray, than have those, just sort of thrown in just for the sake of seeing where the gag originated from. It would be great to have everything, but we don't live in that world, unfortunately.
Smithy would have been great on with
Smithy,
Touch.
yeah, especially. I think so. Yeah. Maybe another time.
Yes, when they do the 4K UHD release.
Maybe the 200th anniversary edition.
Yeah, exactly. On microchip.
Oh no, that's good. No, but it just talking about the restorations themselves, it's so wonderful that Serge and his team, whoever his team are, have done this and scoured the globe. We have to be so grateful, and also it always makes me think. I always think that the sort of the amount of people nowadays that are interested in watching old films, yes, but old Laurel and Hardy films as well, is getting smaller and smaller each year. Of course it is.
Yeah.
But there are still people willing to do this kind of work, to do all the hard yards and scour the globe for these little fragments so that they can be restored and seen properly for for everybody in years to come. And I
Yeah.
just think it just does my heart the world of good to know that people are still, loving Laurel and Hardy that much to do this.
There's an audience for it, or else they wouldn't be doing it. It's funny. I remember, I think in William K. Everson's book, The Films of Laurel and Hardy, he's talking about. I think first of all, he says how the Three Stooges and Abbott and Costello won't be remembered anymore. And like, okay, we got that one wrong, right? At least in the U.S., right? Like everyone knows
Yes,
the
that's right.
Stooges.
Yeah.
But he talks about how probably unwatchable the films will be in the future, considering the state they're in now.
Well, that's interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
know, Everson didn't pass away that long ago, but so I think he saw kind of a rebirth in that kind of thing. But I think he'd be happy to go, wow,
Yeah.
okay, I didn't see this coming.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so
But
again, yeah.
but of course, it also, we do have to sort of press the point that it only happens if we, the punters, support the projects. And we actually put a hand in our pocket and we buy the restorations, because that then funds the next one. That's the thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's always kind of breaks my heart a little bit when people go, is it on YouTube?
Yeah.
Right. Or I can tell you right now that I can't say if all the 28 films, I can tell you a lot of these have already been ripped to YouTube.
I'm sure. Yeah.
And put up.
Sure.
And then, somebody will happily colorize them, which is always
God.
nice.
Don't.
Don't. But it is, that is the problem with the just the expectation that everything will be on YouTube and free, and it's piracy, it's theft. People will go, it's public domain, so shut up. But somebody did put the effort into making these looking beautiful. So I like to respect that kind of thing. I hope more people did. But, these, when you think of just physical media right now, it's becoming more and more of a niche anyway. So you've got a niche within a niche, but that niche is pretty hardcore, right? And I'm finding what's happening, especially with younger people, is that once they get kind of a taste of, let's say, Buster Keaton, then they can go, oh, here's something in the same vein. I'm going to look into that, right? Because I'm interested in that now, right? And so that's what can lead to Laurel and Hardy or Chaplin, or vice versa. Someone looking at Laurel and Hardy can get interested in
gateway
Chaplin
drugs,
or
isn't it?
Keaton.
Yeah.
Pardon me?
Gateway drugs.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is exactly how we, started.
Oh yeah, it was one thing led to another, led to another.
Yeah.
So
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And you keep leading me to other things. This is the thing. You see, you're like my gateway drug. You keep on putting new artists, new comedians in my path, and thinking, I need to check that out.
Yeah. Go watch Three's a Crowd with Harry Langdon. Get back to me.
I might never trust you again, though, by the sound of it. Brilliant. Well, I think we've done the best that we can there to try and encourage people to invest in the silent years, 1928. It is available now on all good retailers. It is wonderful in all aspects. The extras, and just to reinforce that point, that because I do get asked that question a lot. The restorations are the same restorations that are available in the Flicker Alley sets. They are exactly the same, but the extras are completely different. The commentary tracks are completely different, and well worth supporting both if you can.
The extras are like hours and hours of entertainment.
Oh, so just it's like somebody described it online the other day as film school in a box.
Yeah,
and I thought that was lovely. Which is exactly right. It is film school in a box. And
hey, if you reach that goal, our job is done.
Good morning, pupils.
Good morning, teacher.
Very, very good. Now, what is a comet? You.
Comet. A comet is a star with a tail on it.
Right. Name one.
Rin Tin Tin.
Oh. Just for that, you'll stay after school.
Chris, thank you so much. I will speak to you again very soon as we discuss Perfect Day, if you're still up for that.
I'm always up for it.
Wonderful.
You can get that too. I'm absolutely up for doing Perfect Day with you.
I'm not cutting anything out of this episode because it's gold. No, it's great. Thank you ever so much, Chris, and thanks for including me in the Eureka set. It's been an honor and a privilege to be part of a Laurel and Hardy release.
I couldn't think of you not being in it, and continued good luck with your Silence book.
Oh yes.
It's
coming. It's coming.
And I will tell listeners that the impatience for a new podcast will be paid off when the Silence book comes out.
Yes, that it is delaying me a lot, but it is going to be worth it. Yeah.
He's just one man, people. He's just one man.
Michael Knight, a lone crusader. Anyway, that's a different podcast. Right. Thank you so much, Chris. I'm going to let you carry on with your day. Have a great rest of day, and I will speak to you very soon.
All right. Thanks, Patrick.
Thanks, Chris. So that's it for another special episode of the Laurel and Hardy podcast. Do make sure to pick up your copy of Eureka's very special Blu-ray, Laurel and Hardy, The Silent Years, 1928. They are available from all good retailers. They can be played on any Regent Blu-ray player. And I'll put a special affiliate link in the podcast show notes so that you can use that to purchase your copy. Coming very soon is episode 39, in which Chris and I talk about the boys' failed attempt at going on a picnic. Perfect day, so do look out for that. Oh, and just a word about podcasts going forward. There will be, or at least there's likely to be, some disruption to the normal schedule, whatever that schedule may be, of podcast release. I need to have a real push on getting the Laurel and Hardy Silence book finished, ready for distribution, hopefully by the end of the year. Now, that's only going to happen if I focus pretty much solely on that project for the next couple of months or so, as there is still a lot of work to do between now and having it ready for publication. I do have some plans to release some special episodes during that time, but due to the amount of time it takes to prepare, record and edit these standard episodes, and by that I mean where we cover the films, the podcasts that will be published over the next couple of months are likely to be bonus episodes only, and not focused on the films. Bonus episodes are much quicker and easier to put together, and I do have a few in the pipeline. There will, of course, be the new online meeting of the Fraternally Yours discussion group taking place on Zoom just after the Perfect Day episode is published. And all patrons signed up to the Plumtree tier will be receiving an email with information and an invite to that meeting. I will also ensure that there will be regular premium patron-only episodes published throughout. These are the episodes in which I delve into the archives and share contemporary articles about Laurel and Hardy from the trade papers of the day, or sometimes interesting segments from the Laurel and Hardy library of books that are out there. So if you want to make sure you keep getting your regular Laurel and Hardy fix, do make sure you join us on patreon.com and become one of the show's valuable patrons. Links to all that can be found in the podcast show notes and also on our website, laurelandhardyfilms.com. If you have any questions or comments about any of that, please do feel free to contact me by sending an email to theboys@laurelandhardyfilms.com. Just a reminder also for you all that the Blogheads Facebook group that we used to have has now just changed name to Fraternally Yours. It's still the Laurel and Hardy podcast community group, but it's now called Fraternally Yours, as it will be tying in with the new Fraternally Yours Zoom groups meetings that we'll be having very shortly. I'm sure that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But that's all for today. All that's left is to thank our guest again, Chris Seguin. Thank you to the Bohunks Orchestra and Basta Music. And thanks again to you for listening and choosing to spend this time with me. Until next time, it's goodbye from him.
Goodbye.
Goodbye from him.
Goodbye.
And a very goodbye from me. Goodbye.
Bye.